Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome back to another Arduin review. I know it's been a while since we last saw each other. For those of you who know, it kind of inside joke. I wanted to get back to Arduin because not only is it October and one of our favorite months for gaming, but I wanted to get back to Arduin because it's really been, for as long as I can remember, my absolute favorite game world that I did not make myself. I'm not gonna toot my own horn about my own game world, but if I could play in any game world, this would be it. This is the one that I've grown up with since I was 12 or 13 years old. I loved everything about this world, not just the gonzo-ness that came later, but all the details David A. Hargrave came up with way back in the day. This was his baby, not necessarily this book, but his world, and he gave us so many great innovative ideas back in the earliest beginnings of role-playing, and I always need to come back here, and it's always been my home away from home, and I've already covered most of this book being Arduin Eternal. It's a monster of a book, but beautifully put together. Absolutely gorgeous artwork inside and out. And I thought we'd get right back to where we left off. I'm just going to skim through the chapters, and I'm only going to do the pages roughly 402 to roughly 600, because this is like 800-page book. I don't want to give you guys time to soak up what's in it before you go out and buy it, in case money's tight or something like that. It's one of the few books I would absolutely recommend as a must-have for Arduin. And if you really want to know which books I recommend, hit me up in the chat book, because not every book is essential, and not every book is going to be available forever. But this is one of them I would definitely recommend going out and getting. The first section I'm going to talk a little bit about is Faith and Religion, Chapter 7. Each faith or religion has several paragraphs on several topics. Let's start with a good one. Sorry, bear with me. Druids, let's go with that. They have various categories of information. The Intolerant Veneration, Law of the Wild, Sequester, Shackled Dominion, Stigma, Wild Summons, Divine Domains, that being all the different areas that they affect. Another great one was the Emerald Star Cult. There's some that if I mention a name like Iru, you guys are gonna unless you're diehard fans, you're not gonna know what I'm talking about. Heldor, Lady of the Silver Moon, that was one that we were constantly running into in the games that we played, because there was so much written about it back in the day. But the religious chapters go on for a good, I want to say 40 pages. So there's quite a bit to absorb in that section. Followed by Chapter 8, which is Battle and Melee. And there was also a chapter that's coming up called Martial Arts. And I thought that shouldn't have really been separated by another chapter, which I think it was. It should have been incorporated into the Battle and Melee chapter. And Battle and Melee within the Arduin world is handled a little bit different than other games. It has a sort of large coordination factor, which is a combination of two other abilities that can give you, depending on how quick and combat oriented you are, between 1 and 6 actions during your melee. Now, I know other games go a lot higher than that. Palladium you can get, just an exorbitant amount of actions in a melee round. But, unless that's your gig and you want to just, have those very long slugfests of combat, lasting over an hour, this game tries to cut that down. It's not the bread and butter of the game. The game's more about role-playing and exploration as opposed to just long, drawn-out combats. Now, if that's your thing, cool. But, not everybody wants that. Obviously, a lot of people are into the die rolling and all that. Me, personally, I'm more into exploration and role-playing and seeing things I would never see in the real world. That's why I'm here, is to experience those kinds of things. But their combat section is pretty damn good. It's got everything you could think of. I'm looking at all the different types of moves and maneuvers and things like that. Dual wielding, fighting from a mount, fighting prone, fighting while you're kneeling, slips and trips and all that good stuff. It's all here. Everything is summed up pretty well. Now here comes my favorite chapter, that being adventuring. I was just talking about that. It's a nice treatise on just all the different things that are going to go into adventuring, some basic, saving throw rules and experience and things like that, line of sight, light and vision, encumbrance, healing, things like that. And it goes on and on for about 20 or so pages. Then, like I said, chapter 10 is martial arts. And one of the things I really liked about this chapter was that they really went with the racial styles. This is the style of, for example, the dwarves or the hobbits, Amazons. They all have their own unique way of fighting. I'm going to call it without weapons, using your hands, your feet, your horns, your tusks, your mandibles, what have you. Every race really kind of has something like that. Even the animals themselves, they have their own unique way of fighting. And this solidifies that point, giving just about every race some sort of racial style of fighting without weapons, and maybe some of them include their favored weapon type. But I'm not going to go too much into that. But it's quite an interesting chapter, full of things you should know as a dungeon master when running this particular world, and maybe ideas for your own game world. If you want your orcs to have a special fighting style, or your elves, I think that after a certain amount of time, evolution will kick in and they will develop something like that. And believe it or not, the martial arts chapter is one of the largest chapters that in this middle section of the book, and they really did a phenomenal job. Just the concept alone is worthy of giving the chapter a good hard look. Chapter 11 is social dimensions. Stuff I'm assuming is grabbed right from the World Book of Cause. But all of the different, basically more stuff on how the world of Arduin works. The bureaucracy and business, crime, military. These are mostly connections, depending on rank, from 1 to, I think, 5 or 6. Of your connection within that sphere, whether it be political or criminal, religious, etc., which is actually kind of helpful, not just as a game mechanic, but for the players to know kind of their backstory, what motivates them, who they know, who their friends are. Sort of like the life path system in many other games, where you know a lot more about what your character did before they were first level, or before they start interacting with the world and the players around them. And it's really something I hope stays and goes into the next... Sorry guys, my pooch needs to leave the studio. But it's something I really hope makes its way into the new Arduin that's coming out soon, I hope. And more on that later, when we interviewed George from Emperor's Choice, and we'll talk about that later, maybe Sunday or next week. But I don't want to jinx it and start talking about it before it's scheduled to happen. I mean, we have a tentative schedule, but well, like I said, on to Chapter 12, Design and Manufacture. This is a pretty hefty chapter that takes up another big section, starting with design of said item that you wish to manufacture, and all the critical information you're going to need to take care of it in a game sense, including the very much needed technological or techno device steps to make items. A techno's bread and butter also is making devices and gadgets and equipment, and it really goes into great detail here, almost as if it was a spell section of the book. And there's no reason why other characters couldn't decide to make some of these gadgets, some of the simpler things, a magnifying glass or a telescope or things like that, all the way on up to some crazy inventions. I see flintlocks, Geiger counter. Yes, that's how the world of Kaz is, with its interdimensional portals leading to and from Arduin from so many places and so many times and outer space, etc. A Golem computer. God, I wonder what that is. It's just that's the kind of world it is. If you're not into technology and fantasy at the same time, then this game in this world is probably not for you. But if you're one of those people that can accept the melding of those two ideologies, then this is the game for you, and it's always been the game for me. I've always mixed science fiction and fantasy, even all the way back to the Dying Earth. That where we got our original Dungeons and Dragons spell system from. That was a mix of both. Then there's a chapter here on herbalism, and every game has their own version of it, but this one really goes into the different types of plants and their uses, and not just in like magic potions, but common real world sort of uses. I saw milkweed here, and there's a few others that are actually real, and then most of the rest are made up. But how could you not want to have that for your druids, your rangers, even your local townsfolk are going to have this lore, what they use, for an upset stomach or a headache. As far back as you can go, humans have been using the local fauna and flora to do things besides just survive as a food source. Sorry, guys. A leaf must have passed by our house, and our dog had to bark at it. Chapter 15 is alchemy and alchemical recipes. Again, identical to the herbalism chapter. You absolutely need these for a game that, if you're going to have magical potions, this is the chapter for you. And the difficulty and the items needed, the time required to make, whether it be an herbalistic remedy or an alchemical potion, it's very well drawn out, very detailed, and absolutely a must for any game system. Some of the earlier games back in the day just kind of had you wing it, and while that's great if you have the time to put into it, but a lot of players, a lot of new dungeon masters, they just want it written down for them. Well, here you go. It's ready to go. Use it. Make it the lore of your world if you like, and it will make your life a lot easier as a game master. The last chapter I'm going to cover is spirits and animate powers. The concept being that plants and trees and rocks have innate energy is covered in this strange chapter. It's never something I ever thought of. I left that to the Druid players, and it's only a couple of pages long. But dealing with spirits and things like that is is definitely something I know a lot of players enjoy. It's just never been something that I really utilized much in my game world, but still kind of interesting if you want to go that route, especially for different clerics or priests, and obviously druids and barbarians and shaman, and all of which are character professions in this game. Arduin Eternal, absolutely love it. I know it's going to be hard for me to get to the last section of the book. I'm going to try and do it this month, but I've got some other reading to do, so it might be a couple of weeks before I can get back to you. But I am going to try to be done with it by the time I interview George and company, that being Emperor's Choice. And if you liked what you heard here and you liked what you've seen elsewhere in these Arduin reviews, go check out Emperor's Choice. Tell them I sent you. We haven't worked out a promo code yet, but I do know that a lot of these books are going to be coming off the shelves and no longer printed again. When they're done, they're done. So maybe you can shoot me a message in the comment section, and I'll see what I can do to help you guys out. But if you can't wait, just go to Emperor's Choice. You'll find all of the books, I believe, are still on the shelves and still available for purchase. I'm fortunate enough to have everything in the Arduin catalog, library, whatever you want to call it, and they're right here. I keep them handy because I always enjoy going back and looking for little bits of inspiration for my next game. And my next game is going to be a Halloween game for my son's friends, and I'm looking forward to that. And you know I'm going to be using a lot of Arduin goodness. Air sharks, brains, deodants. I can't wait. So until next time, folks, have a great weekend. We love you guys. I'll see you guys real soon, and goodbye.